Alright, so this video is just a video on chapter 8.4 homework problems. We had problems 8, 22, and 36. I felt like the majority of the class had a very difficult time completing the homework, so we're going to practice. Actually, we're just going to work through them. Alright, so we're going to start with number 8. I want to solve this. I noticed I have an x squared, a y squared, x to the first power, and y to the first power. So my choices for solving are substitution or elimination, right? Because my x's, my x squared and my x are not like terms, and my y squared and my y are not like terms, I have to solve this one using the addition, or also called the elimination method. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that way. I meant to say I'll have to solve this using substitution. So I must solve this using substitution. Substitution says solve one of these equations for a variable. So I'm going to solve the second equation for y. So I have 3x minus y equals 5. Add y to both sides. So now I have 3x equals y plus 5. Subtract 5 on both sides. And I have y equals 3x minus 5. Okay? Then it says take this new equation and plug it into the other equation. So wherever I see a y, I'm going to make it 3x minus 5. So it's x squared plus 3x minus 5 squared equals 5. So then I get to FOIL this out or multiply it out, and I have x squared plus 9x squared minus 30x plus 25 equals 5. And because it's a quadratic, well, first I'm going to put my like terms together. So that's 10x squared minus 30x plus 25 equals 5. Now, because it's quadratic, meaning square, I have to get everything on the same side. And my equation just becomes 10x squared minus 30x plus 20 equals 0. And then from here, I have to factor and solve for x. I'm going to take the 10 out, and I have x squared minus 3x plus 2 equals 0. Divide by 10, divide by 10. So I have x squared minus 3x plus 2 equals 0. That factors into x minus 2, as well as x minus 1 equals 0. So x is equal to 2 as well as 1. Notice I'm dealing with a square, which means I should have two answers for x. Now once you find x, you plug it back into any equation to solve for y. I'm going to use this guy right here. So I have y equals 3 times 2 minus 5, which is 1, and y equals 3 times 1 minus 5, which is negative 2. Okay, so my answers are 2 comma 1 and 1 comma negative 2. Alright, problem number 22. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing again. I need to figure out if we're using substitution or addition. I notice I have an x squared as well as another x squared, a y squared, and another y squared. So I have like terms and they're lined up already, so I'm going to use the addition method, which means I need to figure out who I'm going to eliminate. I think it'll be simpler for me to eliminate the y's. This has a coefficient of negative 2, which means I need to make this guy have a coefficient of positive 2. In order to do that, I'm going to multiply the entire equation by negative 2. So let me rewrite the first equation first. Okay, and then the second equation becomes, once I do that, I verify once again that the coefficients are the same but opposite signs, and I add the two equations together. So I get negative x squared equals negative 1. Divide by negative 1. I have x squared equals 1. Take the square root on both sides, and I have x equals 1 as well as negative 1. Now I got to find y. So I can take these x's and plug it into any equation to find y. I'm going to plug it into the second equation. So I have 2 times 1 squared minus y squared equals negative 2. So that's 2 minus y squared equals negative 2, which means y squared equals 4. So then you gotta take the square root on both sides, and you have y equals 2 as well as negative 2. Okay, so right now I know I have answers 1, 2, as well as 1, negative 2. But that was only when x was 1. Don't forget x is also going to be negative 1. So again, I'm going to use this equation, and I'm going to plug in the x. So I got 2 times negative 1 squared minus y squared equals negative 2. So again, that's 2 minus y squared equals negative 2. So you get y squared is going to be 4. You take the square root on both sides, you get y is 2 as well as negative 2. And remember, x was negative 1. So now you have another pair of answers. Negative 1, comma 2, and negative 1, comma negative 2. Notice the square on the x means the x is going to have 2 answers. The square on the y means y is going to have 2 answers. So there's a total of 4 answers. All right, last problem, number 36. And we had x to the third power plus y equals 0, and 2x squared minus y equals 0. Okay, well now we got to figure out substitution or elimination. The x has a third power, and this has a squared, so these are not like terms. But the y is to the first power, and the y is to the first power. So I can use the addition method here, and you also can use the substitution. Both will work. Now I'm just going to stick with the addition. So this has a coefficient of 1. This is negative 1. So they're already the same in opposite signs. So I'm going to go ahead and add these. Add these equations, and I get x to the third plus 2x squared equals 0. And then from here I got to solve for x, right? So I'm going to factor out an x squared, and I have x plus 2 equals 0. So x squared is set equal to 0, as well as x plus 2 equals 0. This one implies x is 0 already. If you take the square root on both sides, you'll get 0. And this one says x is equal to negative 2. All right, so you have your x's. Plug it back into any equation and get your y. I'm going to plug it back into the first equation. So I have 0 to the third power plus y equals 0. Well, that means y equals 0. So my answer for this one is 0, 0. And then I'm going to plug in the negative 2. So negative 2 to the third power plus y equals 0. So that's negative 8 plus y equals 0. So then move the negative 8, and you have y equals positive 8. So the second answer is negative 2, comma 8. Okay, so with these 3 problems, I understand the difficulties of knowing when to do substitution or the addition method, and I understand it can be confusing to deal with squares and the cube and all that. But your substitution method and your addition method are the same as when you were solving your linear system. So please look over this video, and I'm going to get back your homework on Monday. If you would like, you can try to rework the problems before Monday and see if you understand them. If not, please bring me your questions.